Feel the love. That's why we're here, right? Just to love. And be loved, and love, and be loved. And then we say, well, how do we learn to be more and more love? And it's through our love with one another, with our parents, with our children, with our friends, with our community. But then there's a love that seems to even transcend what we normally love, the human love, and that's the divine love. What's interesting is that in the Western, Judeo-Western culture, we really only have one person who we look to as an exemplar of that love, and that would be Jesus. In Judaism, Moses really isn't considered an enlightened being. He's more of a messenger. Muhammad's a prophet. So this isn't true in the Eastern religions, but in the Western religion, we really have this one focus of Jesus. And so when I say that name, Jesus, I just want you to be with what comes up for you, because there's so much energy around this guy, Jesus. People have been taught so much stuff. There's been so much abuse around Jesus. Jesus will save you, and if you don't do this, you're going to hell. And so then it's Jesus the divine, way up in the sky, untouchable and perfect. There's just so much stuff that people take this idea called Jesus and they just twist it to serve their purposes. So now when we hear the name Jesus, there's some people who still feel an open heart, but there's a lot of people, and especially who come to our spiritual but not religious community in our world, feel a energy around Jesus that our hearts constrict when we hear that name. So today I'm not here to torture you, and yet it feels to me that because this presence, this idea called Jesus is so prevalent in our Western culture, we need to face it. We need to have some healing around it for our own selves, because whatever constriction we have, that's our prison. And we need to break free from that prison. So I don't talk a lot about Jesus and Christ consciousness, but I think it's really important that we do, because it is prevalent in our culture. And anyone on a mystical or spiritual path, we need to find peace and healing with our own tradition, or even if Christianity wasn't your own tradition, just by being in this culture, you were raised with Christmas and Jesus this and Jesus that. So that's the intention, is to begin to have some healing around this dude named Jesus. Now, I feel blessed that I actually had a very healthy upbringing around Jesus, mostly because I was raised in a family of agnostics and atheists. So the way my mom taught me, and actually I grew up in the Austin United Church of Christ, which is a very liberal church, and they really are focused on changing the world. So I can't sometimes differentiate between what my mom taught me and what I learned at church, because she wanted me to go to church just to learn Christian values. And I remember she used to say to me, well, I don't know if all those miracles were true. I tend to think that's baloney, but it could happen. She was open. She was agnostic. But what really mattered was what kind of person he was. It was about a way of life. It was about being kind to everybody, that everybody was worthy of kindness, everybody was worthy of love, that we were here to serve one another. He had these noble ideas, and he was human just like you and me. And so I was raised with this idea that Jesus wasn't separate. Jesus was not beating me over the head with, you have to be good. Just be loving. He was just this guy. But over time, it's become evident that there's a lot of really nice people in the world. And so love isn't just about always being nice or being kind or like we love our children or love our adult, that there's something about this divine love that's more. There's some reason why this guy has had such an impact on our planet and had such an impact on history, negative and positive. But why are people buying into it? What is that? Is there something more than just our human capacity to love? And for me, that's the divinity that we also get to experience with Jesus. And as I've shared time before, for those of you who are new, when I was little, I had an experience of, by loving this baby Jesus, the experience of becoming one with the Christ love. And that this Christ love was so much bigger than any love I had for my family. I loved my family, but it was nothing compared to this divine love. It was just vast. So he's this embodiment of this vast, unconditional love. And so what we heard today in the reading by Ernest Holmes was that the reason why he was this vehicle, because there's this God that is this incredibly divine love, and he opened his entire life and surrendered his entire life to the divine and allowed it to move through him. And in that, he became fully embodied as the Christ. I was ready for that. We will include him in our prayers. His name's Mark.
Yeah, Mark. Who George is the man.
Made the transition. In the Christ love. No accident. So he's with us here today in this room. Yeah, thank you, God. So that Christ love has no time, no space, and it includes everybody. And so that Christ presence is within all of us. We all have the capacity, as Ernest Holmes was talking about, to open completely to the Christ. It's not something we have to get. It's not something we're striving to reach for out there. It's already within us. It is already the divine within us, whole, perfect, and complete. It is never hurt, harmed, or endangered in any way. There is no limitation ever. There's nothing that ever can take away from it. There's nothing that ever can be added onto it. It is already the wholeness, and it's at the center of every one of our beingness. The only thing that limits its full expression is our human desires. We've talked about in previous weeks and also on our Tuesday night classes that what brought us to our body is our human desire, or these desires. And so as Yogananda says, that just the fact that we're in physical bodies says that we have desires that brought us here, unfulfilled desires. And that desire brought us here. So we have these deep desires, deep enough desires to create a body to fulfill these desires. That's how deep these desires are. So it's really hard to surrender them and say, well, I'll just let those go and let God move through me. And that's why it's so rare. We can all do it at any moment. We can surrender everything in our life, every desire we've ever had for money, for a relationship, for happiness, for health, for whatever that we want, for the perfect life, for to be creatively expressing. We can just let all of that go and just say, I'm only here for God and I have no other desire. Ramana Maharshi says anyone can do that, but actually very few people can surrender their total life immediately. That it happens over stages, or if you happen to adhere to that idea of many lifetimes, of just greater and greater willingness to surrender our own personal desires. I love that little voice. Sorry, I'm a mom. Hi, Lily. So we have this pure Christ self that is pure and innocent, that is infinitely powerful and tender. The thing that we forget, and that's why we do go on the spiritual journey, is how incredibly loving, how incredibly blissful, how incredibly beautiful, how incredibly peace-filled, creative, abundant, harmonious. It is all that we could ever imagine that is good and beyond anything we could ever humanly imagine. So every time we get a taste of that, that begins to push us a little bit further. I want to let go a little bit more to experience the divine as my life and to become more and more an embodiment and a transparency of the divine within and as me. The thing is I can't control it. We can't make Christ's Spirit happen. It already is us. It's a releasing and it's an allowing. As we let all these layers and desires to dissolve and fears and resistances to dissolve, then we become this great avenue of the Christ energy to move through us and be us. And what's beautiful about this Christ energy, and it's also going to be called the Buddha consciousness or the Atman consciousness, we tend to call it the Christ consciousness in our Judeo-Christian idea, is that it's individualized as each and every one of us. So we have the infinite God, this vast presence that is beyond all human concept. And then it moves into form, and it has an individual expression as each and every one of us. So just as we each have our own individual thumbprint, we each have our own individual soul print. That's the Christ consciousness. So we have this divinity, but it's not a bland, generic divinity. It is a divinity that looks uniquely and powerfully as each one of us. And this is the beauty that we have with the Eastern traditions. In Hinduism, there's many gurus, there's many enlightened beings. In Buddhism, the same as well. And what you see is that when they are enlightened, they don't all look the same. Everybody's different. Enlightenment looks different according to who is expressing that enlightened self. So the more we start, a lot of times people think following Jesus is about becoming like Jesus. But as Reverend Michael says, we are following what Jesus was following. We are becoming one with and attuned to what Jesus was becoming in tune with. And then we become our own unique expressions from there. We are being fully your own self. The divinity that starts to pour through you will not look like anyone else in this room. And it's also not something you can force, and it's also not something you can make happen. I cannot just say, I'm going to be Christ consciousness right now. It takes work. It takes spiritual practice. It takes the letting go and surrendering and surrendering and surrendering. So this is the basic understanding of what the Christ consciousness is within us. And this is what we teach in New Thought. But sometimes when we say Christ is a principle, we think of like Jesus the Christ, and it's like his last name. But really, the Christ consciousness, the Buddha consciousness, is in all religions, it's in all people, it's in all cultures. But when we say principle, it's hard to feel like it's alive, like it's a living thing. They can come on in. Hey, Eric. Hey, you came. Good afternoon. Eric the Christ. So we just have to start greeting everybody. Eric the Christ. Rebecca the Christ. We know who you really are, just so you know. We're all hip to it now. No hiding. That's right. You will come late again. So sometimes it's hard to really get excited about a principle. I liked it. It made rational sense, and yet it lacked something for me. And so I remember one time I took a metaphysical Bible class when I was in ministerial school, and it was taught by Dr. Paul Barrett, who actually had been the dean of the Unity Ministerial School years before. He was in the area, and Reverend Michael, my mentor, said, "Oh, you've got to take this guy. He's the best teacher. You're going to love it." So I was all excited, metaphysical Bible, where you transcend your understanding. And we go in there, and he's like in his 70s, looks like Santa Claus, just jolly, rosy cheeks and white beard. But he's the old school. So he passed out all these sheets of the different Bible verses, had what each word meant metaphysically, then would put the verse, and then what it all meant. And I thought, I come from an agnostic family. I'm always skeptical, so I'm thinking, well, you just made up what these words mean. It's like this. And then we just go around and read it, and that's what we would do for 3 hours. There was no discussion. Sometimes he would tell fun stories, but other than that, it was just reading these things, and this means this, and there's the whole paragraph, and now let's go to the next verse. And I thought, why would Reverend Michael say this guy is so great? So I was very bummed. And the next week I come, and I'm chilling in my chair, just reading along. And we get to the point where Abraham is tithing to Melchizedek because he's had so much good. And he's explaining that Melchizedek, this is in Genesis, another name, I don't know how they get this, but of Melchizedek is the Prince of Peace. Jesus was called the Prince of Peace. Jesus said, before Abraham was, I am. And at this point, he's not talking from human identity, but from that Christ consciousness. And so Abraham was, in fact, tithing to the Christ presence. As he's teaching this, suddenly the words on the page are off the page. They're dancing like musical notes. And the energy's just flying through, and then there's this guy across from me, he's Jewish, and then the teacher, and it's like boom, 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 there's just this energy's all around, and I became very conscious of the Christ presence, and it was intentional, it was alive, and it was overseeing everything, and I just thought, oh, this isn't just a principle, this isn't just like a thing that like, oh, isn't this an interesting concept? It was like living and alive, and it's been alive since before Abraham was I am, that this has been around since earth began, and it is consciously and alive, living directing and activated as all of us. So when we talk about opening to this Christ principle, I like to let go of that word principle because it feels dead to me. It feels like a concept. It's a living energy that's right now in you, around you, surrounding you, loving you passionately. It is intentional. It wants to wake up to it because it's already enlightened. It's already fully expressed. It's already full of joy. It is already full of life. And the more we let go and allow it to come through, the happier it is. And it's right now. In you, as you, surrounding you, alive and awake. And this is the Christ consciousness. This is why we are here on earth, to let go of our human desires, to move beyond them, however we do that. For some people, it's they want to fulfill their desires and then they can let go. Other people just let it go. Sometimes we realize when we fulfill our desires, we actually are never satiated. You never feel fulfilled when you get what you want. But at one point, as we evolve, we start losing interest in all these human desires, and we get more and more interested in surrendering ourselves to this incredible power that is at the source of our very being, this very powerful energy. And then I talked about, because I had this love of Jesus, that when I got the call to ministry, it came through Paramahansa Yogananda, who was Hindu, and Shunwa Suzuki, who was Zen. But before I had a mistrust of Eastern teachers. I liked the Eastern teaching, but I'd heard a lot of negative things. So I was told by this Christ presence, you can trust them. And then they went on to tell me to be a minister, and then I learned about them and what they taught. And then it became clear to me, and I was struggling because I recognized I still had these walls inside of me, Christ consciousness, even though conceptually I could say that it was universal. I still felt very much that it was a Christian thing or a Jesus thing. And more, it's like everything was happening. This Christ consciousness is saying, no, I'm all of it. It is the divine Mother, Father, God that has birthed itself into creation over and over again in Buddhism, in Hinduism, in Taoism, and in Islam, in Judaism, and all the different major world religions, in the indigenous cultures, in individuals that aren't even part of a religion, that it's been birthing itself over and over through creation. In its beautiful spark is all of us. The Christ consciousness has no walls. It has no limits. It is itself manifest in form. We are all the sons and daughters of God. We are all the Christ consciousness. Or if you can ever get comfortable with that, the Buddha consciousness, the Atman consciousness, which is the Hindu. We are the unique self, we are individualized, and we are part of a big group. The Christ consciousness is, when I was feeling that Christ presence, it wasn't just me, or just Abraham or Jesus. It's like includes groups of beings, and then like families, and then the families coalesce and become bigger groups until there's this incredible vast oneness. So even your uniqueness of your soul, just like thumbprints. I was watching what happened, what was it, Rough Ruffman with Julian on PBS, and I was learning about thumbprints. And it turns out there's categories of thumbprints. So even though each thumbprint is unique, you can actually categorize different styles. And so that's us. We have this Christ consciousness. We're individualized, but we're also connected with a lot of other people in our group, I love that she's looking at her phone. That made me laugh. I'm sorry, Michelle. It's just, I'll look at our thumbprints. So we all have this incredible Christ consciousness that's individualized and that's part of a group. No one here is an island. Nobody is alone. So I don't want us to believe that individuation is separate from oneness. It's separate from being part of a group. This Christ consciousness is individualized, completely unique, and yet completely one with all life and all time. And it is living, and it is alive, and it is clear exactly what it wants to do with its life as you. It has no doubts. You all right? You with me? Yes, love it. And so the invitation this week is just to be conscious. When am I feeling the Christ consciousness? When am I feeling something greater? And let us feel it. It can be in our mind, in our body, but in our heart as well. When am I feeling that I'm operating in this moment from Christ consciousness? And I see masseuse, people who do qigong, yoga. Do you feel that that Christ consciousness is moving through you when you're doing your work, when you're doing what you're here called to do? And then do we compartmentalize? Do we allow the Christ energy to move through in certain situations and not other situations? Often we lose that sense of divinity in our personal relationships. I remember working with my friend at Agape, and she said, I thought I was fully enlightened until I got into a relationship. Because that when we're in a relationship is when we're our human beings, right? That's when we relate to all our emotional history and our family life and all that stuff comes up. Y'all are relating to that, aren't you? It's true. So it might be easier to get out of the way in a work life and not at home, or for some other people, vice versa. Maybe when you're being a mom, you feel like you're in that Christ presence, and when you go to work, you feel shut down because it's not a job that interests you, or it's very task-oriented. So what I want us to do, this whole month, we're going to be talking about Christ consciousness in various forms. Next week, we're going to talk about cleaning up. Last week, we did waking up, growing up, showing up. Next week, we're going to do cleaning up in the context of Christ consciousness. But I want you all to be with, when is Christ consciousness moving through me? When am I aware of it? There's 5 Sundays in August. One of the things that came up in visioning this past Thursday was allows the wisdom to come through with the community. So every 5th Sunday, I'm going to invite 2 people to do the talk, 10 minutes each. And so this month, we have 5 Sundays, so on August 31st, I'm going to invite 2 of you to talk about when you feel, for 10 minutes each, when you feel the Christ consciousness showing up in your life, when you feel it, and what does that feel like, and is it different than how you are normally, and how do you know, and it will be unique. You'll know what to say, but that's part of it, is to experience the uniqueness. So I'm not just asking and then forgetting. You're on the spot, just so you know. Next week, I'm going to be starting just to maybe 1 or 2 comments of when you're feeling Christ consciousness, and then the 5th Sunday we'll have speakers. Okay?
I was going to say, you just journal each day when Christ consciousness in you. By the end of the month, you'll have 10 minutes.
10 what?
You journal each day for 2 minutes.
Oh, 2 minutes. Okay, yeah.
That day. By the end of the month, you'll have 10 minutes.
That's true. Yes. Very practical. Thank you. I like.
It's not as hard.
Yeah. You're trying to say it's not. Yeah. Well, and not everybody gets to speak 10 minutes, and so and I know everybody loves to speak. So there's a lot of 5th Sundays. So every 5th Sunday I'll pick new people, and we'll get through the whole group. Everyone gets to share different topics. Okay. So we're going to move into prayer unless someone has a question or comment. Y'all good? Y'all feeling the Christ presence right now? As you, not out there, but in you right now? If you don't, just think of something you really, really love and let it expand, because that's always the Christ. So we'll just start with that. We'll just start with the beginning. What's something that we really, really, really love without condition, that no matter what happened, we would love? This being, this animal, this person. And just let that love fill our hearts. That nothing could ever make us not love this presence, this person, this beingness. No matter what circumstance and condition arose, we would still love. We can't help but love. We just feel so much love. We recognize that love is who we are. That is when we are most in alignment with who we are, is when we love passionately. When we love beyond a shadow of a doubt, when we love without any condition, limitation, boundary, we love. And that love is alive. That love is alive in every atom and cell of our body, and every organ and function that we are, that's flowing up and down and through and as all that we are. And as we know that this is who we are just a microcosm of the macrocosm. That all that God is and ever shall be is this pure, unconditional, infinitely powerful, infinitely wise, infinitely intelligent love. This love that includes all time and space, and yet is beyond all dimensions of time and space. It is beyond all phenomenal experience, and it is in and through and as phenomenal experience as love, love, and more love. And that this love is intentional and creative and joy-filled and bliss-filled. And that this is the love that we are this love as joy, of bliss, of creativity, of fun, of abundance, of beauty, of harmony, that all the beauty of the magnificence of God is who we are already. Nobody, no circumstance, no condition can ever limit this love that we are, this joy that we are, this absolute eternal truth that we are, that is birthless and deathless, that is already fully awake and alive as each and every one in this room. We are it now, in this moment. We don't need to wait for another moment. It is here now. It is each and every one of us. So let us just breathe in the truth of who and what we already are. Not because I've said it, not because we've made it happen, but simply because it has been before we were ever birthed, and it is always will be who and what we really are. We choose to see that which is real. We choose to hear, to feel, to know beyond humanly what we can say that we know, but intuitively. It is who we are now. We've never been limited, this Christ consciousness that we are. And so we allow it to pervade every area of our life. Just in this moment, in our awareness, notice the places where we feel we are the least awake in our life. Just pick up in your daily life of every week, where do you feel like you're the least conscious that you are Christ consciousness, that you are the already enlightened self? And in that place, let us just choose intellectually first, and then maybe you'll move into our heart, into our body. Let's just choose to remember that even there is this infinite oceanic love, this Christ consciousness that is never imprisoned, that is never limited, that is always free and blissful. Let's just remember that that is actually at the source and the heart of wherever this block is, wherever this limitation is. At the source, at the center of that is this Christ heart, this Christ love, this Christ consciousness. And it is infinitely powerful. It is more powerful than any circumstance or condition. It is more real than any circumstance or condition. It is more real than any block or heaviness or darkness. It is more tender and caring and compassion than anything that is dark or limiting or dense. As we heard in the reading today, it is always victorious. It is always what is the most real about who we are and about every aspect of our life. And as we know this about our life, we know this about the entire planet. We hold this entire planet to know that the source and the truth at the center and the heart of this planet, of all situations and circumstances, is this Christ love. And we are here to be advocates, embodied leaders of this love, to see only love, to see only the Christ, to see only the wholeness and the perfection. And in our seeing, we create space for it to come into manifestation as we can never believe thought was possible. Miraculous things begin to shift and happen, not just in our own interior world, but in, for, and as the world around and surrounds us. One power, one presence. It is the only power. It is the only presence. It is the only reality that is eternal. And we live and move and have our being from that place, not just in our own little worlds, but in the world that encompasses this whole planet Earth and all the cosmos. It includes all time, all space, all dimensions. We are in alignment with all of it when we are in alignment with who we are as the Christ self. And so from this place, we are the healers and revealers of the kingdom of heaven on earth now. We are the place of the infinite power of good, the infinite power of grace, the infinite power of freedom, joy, and bliss. We are that now. And so for the glory of the living God that is alive as each and every one of us in this room, for each and every one in this room who is now inherently saying yes to the truth of who and what they are, and because of that, things are shifting beyond our wildest imagination, I just say thank you, thank you, thank you, Mother, Father, God, for the fulfillment of this word, for the fulfillment of your consciousness as everyone in this room, for the fulfillment of your life and your power and your wisdom as this planet Earth and all the cosmos. Thank you, Mother, Father God, and into you I surrender this word. I just let this word be. I completely release it. I take my hands off of it. With any illusionary idea that I am in charge, I just let it go. I release, I release, I release, and I let it be. And I invite us all to say together now, and so